card. The referee. They're gonna stop this. They're gonna stop it.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that Brazil's own amateur standout, Beatriz Ferreira, has been ordered to fight for the IBF title, with Caroline Dubois turning down the opportunity to fight with Beatriz for the newly vacated title. The sanctioning body has now ordered Ferreira to face Jelena Janicijevic for the title.
I told you that Caroline Dubois don't keep the energy for Beatrice that she keeps for Rhiannon, and maybe it's because Rhiannon's not an Olympian.
Beatrice, who not but a few months ago said that she'd fight Caroline Dubois anytime. Why is it a fight that Beatrice is receptive to, but Caroline isn't?
Beatriz Ferreira, who sports a professional record of 4 wins with no losses, no draws, 2 recorded knockouts.
To be facing Serbia's own Jelena Janicijevic, who sports a professional record of 5 wins with 1 loss, 1 draw, 2 recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 7 professional bouts, having last seen action over a year ago in January opposite the ring Sarah Weidman.
Saying the night of the fight, Jelena Janicijevic will have been out of action for over a year's time. She's been averaging 1 fight a year for the last 4 years.
Whereas Beatriz Ferreira, in the last 2 years, has been comparatively more active. She debuted as a professional in November of 2022 and has fought 4 times since then, having last seen action in December of last year.
She's gonna eat Jelena Janicijevic up.
For a fighter with no real amateur experience like Rhiannon Dixon, Jelena Janicijevic would be a decent little acid test, but for somebody like Beatriz Ferreira, an Olympian, this is going to be target practice. Beatriz Ferreira is way too fast. She's much quicker to the draw with more hand speed and foot speed, more athleticism, much more than what you get from Jelena Janicijevic, who's several years older, that very upright Soviet style.
You notice that her torso doesn't really move much. She doesn't really bend at the waist.
In order to slip, roll, and ride with punches, rather, Jelena Janicijevic, she's the kind of fighter that's either going to cover up or beat those feet to get out of the way. Whereas Beatriz's movements are a lot more fluid, keeps her head on a swivel, her torso on a swivel, to close the distance and slip what punches are coming at her as she brings over punches of her own. She's very strong, very fast.
Whereas Jelena is noticeably slower, older, punches wider.
There's definitely something on her punches, but she's losing a half a second loading them up to add power to them. Her hooks are pretty wide, and because she's given up that half a second to load up the shot, add some power to it, she'll get beat to the punch. Beatriz is a lot faster.
She shoots from the hip. Her best punches are her bent-arm punches, mid-range to inside. She's dangerous there.
Shows a great variety of punches at that range. Head punches, body shots, uppercuts up the middle, whereas Jelena primarily, she's a headhunter. In spite of Jelena having more pro bouts and more rounds in the bank, more experience than Beatriz, there isn't anything she actually does better than Beatriz. That's that amateur experience of Beatriz shining through. Beatriz isn't just a better physical specimen, she's a better tactician as well. Staying off the line and countering in kind. And these are not broad strokes, they're short movements, subtle movements. That amateur experience allows Beatriz to better judge distance than Jelena Janicijevic or some other fighter.
It's the benefit of all that amateur experience that by the time you go pro, it's ingrained into the fighter's muscle memory.
Second nature. And it's very good that this world title opportunity has come around when it's come around, because for all her talents and all her virtues, Beatriz Ferreira is not the youngest fighter. You often talk about the virtues of an amateur career or an extended amateur career, but there is a trade-off. All those years in the amateurs limit how many years you'll have to give to the pros. Beatriz is 31.
She only has 4 professional bouts, and if you're wondering why doesn't she fight more often, it's because she's dividing her time simultaneously between the amateurs and the pros.
I believe she's still trying to qualify for the next Olympics, so when you consider how she's been dividing her time between the pros and the amateurs, she's very fortunate to get this world title opportunity after just 4 professional bouts, given her age. She has to move at an accelerated schedule. Thankfully, she's doing that. And I think she's going to beat the brakes off of Jelena Janicijevic. I think she will become IBF champion in just 5 pro bouts.
This is going to be target practice for Beatrice.
There's nothing that Jelena does better than Beatrice. She's not going to be able to keep her out or keep her off. I anticipate Beatrice Ferreira, she's not only going to win this fight, I think she's going to stop Janicijevic.
I think she's going to stop Jelena Janicijevic and become IBF lightweight champion.
All that's left is for Matchroom to make the fight. And I'm looking forward to it.
I believe so. You know, Gervonta's the one who's been calling it out. You know, everyone's been calling out Benn. He's the name everyone wants to fight right now. So, you know, we'll definitely be getting something across, and it's a massive fight. But like I say, every person is calling out Benn right now, and it's the fight people want to make. Like, as far as I'm aware, Gervonta Davis, he promotes himself. He's got his own promotional company that he uses, and he's his own promoter. Obviously, he was promoted by Mayweather Promotions for a long time, but that was, I think, quite publicly that's all finished now, and he's his own promoter. So, you know, I think there's definitely opportunity to work with Gervonta Davis on this fight. I think financially, to make it happen, obviously he's just come off a massive fight against Ryan Garcia. US pay-per-view numbers are huge, and I think really the US is most realistic. I know, though, he said on multiple occasions, he said recently, didn't he, that he wants to fight in the UK, and his next fight will be in the UK. So anything's possible, but I think in reality the US is most likely for a fight involving him.
Said it before and I'll say it again. I don't know how much stock anyone should have in this story, that Gervonta Davis might cross over and box on the Matchroom and DAZN side of things for 1 or 2 or maybe 3 fights, that his interest in boxing Benn is a genuine interest. I don't know how much stock anyone should have in that, though, on the premise that he's serious and he actually ends up crossing over to box Benn or someone else. I don't know. He did say he wants to box in the UK, but he says a lot of things.
There is reason enough to not believe him.
This conversation is happening in an arena where he is serious. He does end up crossing over to box Benn or somebody else for some kind of an engagement. If he were to do that, that would be a horrible look for Al Haymon, a horrible look for Al Haymon's PBC and their newly inked Amazon deal. Because what does it say about the deal if one of the biggest names on your side of the street that has been on your side of the street, what does it say about the deal if he ends up jumping ship? If he ends up leaving, you know, when a Ray Vargas or a Subriel Matias.
2 of the PBC's premier boxing champions have so elected to jump ship and box on other sides of the street where they've been boxing on the PBC side up until this point. But that doesn't make as big a splash as if Gervonta Davis ends up leaving.
On the heels of what was his biggest fight, the biggest fight of his career, at least commercially, one of the bigger fights the PBC has put on in recent memory, how many people did you see patting themselves on the back last year as a result of Davis versus Garcia and what it brought in at the box office? And if Gervonta Davis ends up crossing the street the very next fight.
So much of the propaganda in association with Al Haymon and his PBC and how successful it's supposed to be is attached to the success of Gervonta Davis, what is intended to be one of the bigger names on their side of the street, the face of boxing to some people, if you ask them.
What does it mean if he ends up crossing the street? And if Gervonta Davis ends up crossing the street, how long before the actual face of boxing, the top draw in the sport right now, the top earner?
How long before Canelo crosses the street? That if Gervonta Davis ends up leaving them, how long will it be before Canelo ends up leaving them?
I don't want to get ahead of myself with this story because in all actuality, a fight hasn't been made. Gervonta Davis, he hasn't gone anywhere yet, and he may just be wasting everybody's time. Many times have you seen him say that he'll fight this guy, or he'll fight that guy, or he'll do this, or he'll do that, just for absolutely nothing to happen, for nothing to materialize. This could all be much ado about nothing, but if it isn't, and he actually ends up crossing over, that is not a good sign.
Why would he cross over?
Rumor has it that the Amazon deal is little more than just a distribution deal. It's not the same commitment that Fox made to the PBC or Showtime made to the PBC back in 2018, that Amazon isn't actually giving them any money. They're not giving them a budget. And without the broadcaster giving them a budget, how the hell are they supposed to pay the fighters? Where are the guarantees to the fighters supposed to come from? Rumor has it that the PBC ain't got no dough.
So if you're wondering why Gervonta would leave them, that might be it.
Made very good money in his last fight, and he wants to keep making good money, but how's he supposed to do that when all they have to offer him are guys like Frank Martin and Rayo?
You're not going to do 1 million buys fighting people like that. You're not going to do 500,000 buys fighting people like that. You'd be lucky to break 300,000 fighting those guys.
And for no guarantee, no money up front. Don't lose sight of the conversation. Don't lose sight of what we're talking about. We're postulating, we're hypothesizing that if Gervonta Davis ends up crossing over, that might be the reason. But he hasn't crossed over yet.
Still one of the most protected fighters in the sport of boxing. And look at Rolly. I mean, look at Rolly. Look at what he did. He literally turned down more money in a Ryan Garcia fight for less money in an Isaac Cruz fight. In the Isaac Cruz fight, it's not even the main event.
Not outside the realm of possibility that Gervonta Davis stays put, irrespective of what people are saying right now. It's not outside the realm of possibility that he stays where he is, though on the premise that he doesn't and he crosses over, I suspect that would be the reason. That would be the why. The PBC ain't got no money.
Not much in terms of support from Amazon Prime, who they just jumped into bed with. I mean, they held the press conference. The kickoff press conference was held on YouTube, but I didn't see nothing about the fight on Amazon, and I've got Amazon. I'm a Prime member. I'm on there all the time.
But I've yet to see anything from them in reference to a Zoo versus Thurman fight. All this talk about how much bigger Amazon is than DAZN and the marketing arm of Amazon, they haven't done much marketing.
So maybe Gervonta ends up leaving, or maybe he stays there, stays put, because he still is one of the most protected fighters in the sport, and it's hard to imagine that he's going to leave the island.
That he's going to venture outside of the PBC's borders. I'd have to see it to believe it.
You would have to suggest that he's asked someone to cut his eye open to force him out of the fight, which is the most ridiculous thing.
Well, as ridiculous as that might sound to Eddie Hearn, it's an accusation that Tyson Fury once made himself many years ago in 2013, when David Haye suffered a cut in sparring en route to what was supposed to be their fight. Tyson Fury accused him of cutting himself to get out of the fight.
Didn't seem ridiculous to Fury.
But this is the problem, this is like social media and, I spoke to someone and someone told me that so-and-so, oh my God, 100 retweets, next thing, that's the new narrative. It's all bollocks. Like, the fact is...
How fucking ridiculous is that suggestion, though, that a fighter at that level or whoever would...
Don't forget, when David Haye got cut, when he was supposed to fight Fury, Fury said that Haye cut himself deliberately to get out of the fight.
That's exactly what he said. The same Tyson Fury who not but a few months ago said Undisputed was never a priority for him. It was never his dream. It was always someone else's dream. How much do you really think he wants to be here when he says stuff like that?
So
Haye can have his say, or have his comments if that was said to him.
everybody, when something like that happens, everyone's gutted. Emotions are high. And I said, Fury in the past has said a lot of things that haven't materialised or haven't. So there is that, a little bit of, not mistrust from people, but whatever.
But it is mistrust, and they have reason not to trust him. They're pulling stuff out of their ass here. He's been blowing off the idea that he should fight Usyk for any reason for a while now.
Usyk ain't one of them either.
No. Usyk ain't on the list. He's a no-name. No one's interested, and it doesn't make any money. So what would I want to fight him for? It's a small cruiserweight. A foreigner, don't speak good English.
Sefer Seferi, Francesco Pianetta, Tom Schwartz. They didn't speak good English, but you had no problem fighting them.
And nobody's really interested anyway. He's not saying anything I like. I want the big fights that people are interested in, and that ain't one of them.
What if he was to beat Joshua?
Still, it won't be a big fight. He's still a foreigner in a westernised world.
Did you hear that? This is from before Usyk beat Anthony Joshua, beat him 2 times and took his belts. And even then, Fury would not entertain an Usyk fight.
The belts are back in the West. and they're going to stay there. And, you know, so whatever it sounds like, the heavyweight champion should be from Britain or America, nowhere else.
But no, absolutely didn't cut himself open to avoid the fight.
I'm not so sure. Is it that Eddie Hearn hasn't seen how many times Fury has found different ways and different reasons to try and blow this fight off? How many times has this fight been canceled or postponed now? How many times now? Team Usyk had to go as far as asking for a $10 million penalty should anyone pull out on May 18th to make sure that Fury don't bail.
So are you sure? Are you really sure he didn't cut himself to get out of this thing?
In this case, if Tyson is not going to be able to come to May 18th, Alexander going to fight no matter what on that date, which is His Excellency guaranteed that. And then we said, we wanted to put penalty if Tyson is not coming. So, but they turned around and they said, the penalty then it has to come from both sides. It cannot come from one side. So, actually that came from our side to put that into the contract.
And just to confirm for people who maybe haven't seen some of the other videos, that it would go from the fighter as well. It wouldn't be something that's paid for by Saudi Arabia. It would come direct from each fighter. Directly.
That has to come directly from a fighter, from his next purse or previous purse or whatever is going to happen. But the fighter must, it will come from a fighter's purse.
You guys are boxing fans? You watch boxing? Is this at all a common practice? A penalty that size? $10 million out of the fighter's own pocket, out of their own bank account. This is not a deduction they would be making from Fury's purse for the Usyk fight. This would be coming from Fury's bank account, not the Saudis. Is this a common practice? Do fighters and their teams normally have to resort to this to make sure nobody pulls out?
It is with Fury.
With anyone else, it would seem a ridiculous proposition that a fighter, a prize fighter, would be willing to walk away from the biggest prize of their career for fear of losing, for fear of another fighter. With another fighter, that's a ridiculous proposition. Any other fighter than Fury, because Fury's done this before. Before the Usyk fight became a thing, before the Wilder trilogy, before any of that, the biggest fight of Tyson Fury's career was the Klitschko rematch. The most money that he stood to make with any fight in the heavyweight division at that time, it was the Klitschko rematch, the second Klitschko fight. But he ended up walking away, didn't he? At a very convenient time to walk away, because he was supposedly mentally unfit.
First, it was the ankle injury that delayed the rematch. Then, he was mentally unfit to fight.
All while he's being investigated by UCAT for pissing hot, for testing positive for nandrolone. And at that time, the Klitschko rematch was the biggest fight that he could have for the most money. But he still walked away. He still absconded for 2 years. So here today, no, I don't put it past him.
Where Eddie Hearn may think it's a ridiculous proposition that Fury cut himself to get out of this fight. He thinks that's ridiculous. I think Tyson Fury's ridiculous.
And I don't put it past him. However he did it, I suspect he did it. He did it himself. It wasn't by accident, it was by design, but unfortunately for him, it didn't work.